Marginalized communities and immigrants, we're not paying to be tolerated. We're wonderful. And so we want to be accepted and respected. And that is why we are part of this country. We go back from when the country started. This country was built on the immigrant experience. This is a melting pot, right? And so we moved away from that. And we need to pronounce it and make it clear that marginalized communities are not visitors to the country. We made the country. We are what the country is. And everybody's from somewhere, and no one's going anywhere. We belong, and we're going to stay.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. This episode is brought to you by the entertainment payroll company Extreme Reach. They have beautiful software and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. If you are making film and television, you should call them and tell them I sent you. They are committed to diversity and promoting women, and the fact that I'm telling you about them means that they have put their money where their mouth is. Let's reward them for that. For this episode, I interviewed Sue Obeidi. Sue is the director of the Hollywood Bureau of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, or MPAC. And since 2011, when MPAC's Hollywood Bureau was launched, Sue has blended the love of her faith with her love of film, television, and digital series to change and expand the narrative of Islam and Muslims in the entertainment industry. Behind the scenes, Sue engages decision makers and creatives to improve the quality and number of authentic, nuanced, and inclusive presentations of Islam and Muslims so that audiences can see Muslims as vital contributors to creating social change and cultural change in America and around the world. She also enriches the pool of Muslim talent in Hollywood by nurturing and connecting them to those who can assist with their careers, both on the creative and business sides of the industry. And in 2017, Sue was chosen for Variety's Inclusion Impact Report as one of 60 changemakers making the entertainment industry more inclusive. We had a wonderful and timely conversation. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. And you can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. Now, I've been plugging the Kiss My Age show, the show where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about all the things that matter. And if you fall into that category, please join the Facebook group and join the conversation. Okay, here's my conversation with Sue Obeidi. Have a listen. What is your job?
So I am the director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council's Hollywood Bureau. And you might ask, well, what is all that?
What's that?
Yes. So MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, is a public policy advocacy group that works with media, news, and entertainment to basically improve the image and perceptions of Islam and Muslims on TV and film.
When was this founded?
This was founded back in 1988. We are actually a public policy organization, so we have a completely other office in DC. And so there we work with government decision makers to make sure that our decision makers are consistent with the U.S. Constitution.
How's that going lately?
Not very well, and which means at the end of the day that all communities are protected.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine that it is not going very well right now, and it's like a uphill battle.
I bet it's been a challenge since about 2001 in particular.
Oh, absolutely.
And then it's only gotten incrementally worse.
It got worse, then it got a lot better, and then it got a lot worse. Under, believe it or not, Bush, the Bush administration, there was a lot of access. They, wanted to talk, they wanted to understand. And so you might find that very odd, but it's not. Under Clinton, under President Bush, under Obama, at least we had access to a conversation.
They were curious.
They were curious and wanting to really, help, So it's been about maybe 40 years, ever since Trump made his intentions to run for the presidency, that it's been really different. It hasn't felt like the America we know and love.
Mm-hmm. So what does that look like from your perspective with this organization? Was just access cut off? Besides all the rhetoric, how is it manifesting?
I think the hate speech from the future president was something we were never exposed to. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking, the public hate speech. I mean, he didn't hide, and still doesn't hide how he feels, right? And so that was different. There was almost a lack of feeling like you're part of the fabric of society, where with under the previous presidents, you did, even though there was a war raging under Bush, you still felt, like you were part of the country, and you're a valuable part of the country.
And you're still American.
And we're still American, and just that we're Muslim. I mean, we're American Muslims. And so that was different for us under when he actually made his intention from day one. It just was bad from day one. But having said this, Julie, there are a lot of silver linings in the past 4 years. I mean, look at Muslims and Jews and some Christians and other marginalized communities working together to really protect the United States and the Constitution, really. I mean, look at Muslims and, say, the LGBTQ community banding together more than, in the past. I don't think we have. Or, Muslims and the Latino community coming together and working together to keep families together and to protect communities. That hasn't happened. Muslims and Jews have always had a dialogue, especially I would say the progressive Jews have always had a dialogue. Christians, who are more of the progressive Christians, have always had a dialogue. So that didn't change as much, but it changed in a way that it just got even more, the relationships got more cohesive.
Because are people finally figuring out if anyone's marginalized, then everybody's marginalized?
We're all marginalized, and they're coming for us next. Because really, it really is that feeling. Like if they're talking about one group, they're going to be talking about another. If they're going after one group, they're going to go after another.
Especially when there's no shame about going after groups right now.
No shame. The Japanese community, the Muslim community and the Japanese community have had a very strong relationship since 9/11, and we can understand why, because there was talk about
internment camps,
internment camps and taking away some civil rights and things like that. So that only got stronger. So he's done us some favors, and I will really be honest about it, because this cannot all be for naught. We have to come out of this stronger and better as a nation. It's going to be tough, but I think it is. There are a lot of silver linings, and you don't have to look far.
I agree with you.
Great.
I think we're going to look back at this time, hopefully. I mean, we have the opportunity to really come out of it in a much better place than we went in. Just because people's eyes are open.
Right.
I think.
I hope. We'll see in November, but I hope so too. And it is starting to feel different from the last 2 years. It is, I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I do hope, and I don't think you're gonna have to edit this out, but I do hope President Trump stays the president, and that he's not impeached, because I feel like those who voted for him to kind of feel the burn of what he did to this wonderful nation of ours.
Well, it does feel like unless he is voted out with an overwhelming majority,
exactly,
there'll be too much room for conflict
Correct.
inside of that.
It's like a civil war or something like that. Absolutely.
We don't want to say those words,
but
that could happen if we take him out in some other way.
Right, if he's impeached. We don't want him impeached. We actually...
We want him voted out in a free and fair election.
Absolutely, and loud and clear.
Yeah.
Loud. Electoral votes, and popular votes.
In an undeniable majority.
Boom, boom, boom. Right, exactly.
That will be the best way.
That was what we want, yeah.
Now tell me, how did you come to this work?
Well, I've always had a passion for my faith. The image of my faith was always something left to be desired, whether it's on TV or film or in public policy. And
you didn't like just seeing terrorists?
No, right? But I want to kind of rewind, Julie, about 18 years ago, because I wasn't the director of the Hollywood Bureau from the beginning of my tenure at MPAC. I was the director of operations for the organization for a good number of years. Prior to that, I was a bank manager, and really something was just calling me out. I was a corporate America person, and something was just calling me out of that lifestyle to go into, work for MPAC specifically, because I knew the organization. I actually
Can we go back even further?
Yes.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a city called Cerritos, California. Yeah, so it's a suburb of LA.
Yeah.
Near the OC border, and that's where I grew up and went to elementary school, junior high, high school, and I went to Cal State Fullerton for my college, my undergrad, and Cal State DMS for my master's, but I don't think you need to know all that. That's just, so yeah.
Well, you're a local girl. We like to know
I am
that.
a local girl. I didn't grow up in LA proper, but in a suburb of LA. But I grew up wanting to be an actress, I'll just put it out there. And because of cultural, norms or restraints, if you will, it wasn't really encouraged. Being Middle Eastern, Muslim specifically, being an actress was not something your parents wanted, to rush to tell their friends.
Well, and there were going to be no parts for you for many years.
And so putting that on the side, right? And even putting that on the side as a vocation, it wasn't something, that they wanted. And while they didn't forbid it, they didn't really encourage it. I did take a few acting classes here and there, blah, blah, blah. But, at a certain age, I realized, in order for me to do this, I would need support of the family. I would need to really do everything I could possibly do to make myself a success. And I don't think the cards were in place for that to happen back then.
Bless you. My cat is sneezing in the background.
And so when I entered college, I just kind of put it back on the back burner and went the business route, got my bachelor's in marketing and then master's in management. And it was later that I was like, gosh, I really, still want to be in this industry. And, working with the organization, the founder and president of the organization, Salam El-Mariyati, saw that the desire, the love I have for the entertainment industry, the desire to always learn more about it. And when it was time to create the Hollywood Bureau, he asked me to lead it. And so that's how I transitioned from operations, being, the management, finance, HR person, to leading the Hollywood work.
So was the Bureau here before they opened the Hollywood?
There was no. That is a great question. The answer is no. There was always MPAC, and then there was always the Media Awards, which was an annual award gala for projects that epitomized voices of courage and conscience. So something similar to the ELMAs, the NAACPs, the GLADs.
Yeah.
Exactly, the GLAD Awards. So those awards, very similar. So we've always dabbled in Hollywood that way by recognizing good work, but there was never a department with a budget, with expectations. And so that came much later, and I was with the organization when that happened.
So what made the organization think we have to take this up a notch?
That's a great question too. I mean, it was the writing on the wall. After 9/11, you saw the TV shows that came out of 9/11, Sleeper Cell, 24, Homeland, and a lot of other shows. And we just started making ourselves available as consultants. We started making ourselves available, speaking on panels and in that way. But we still weren't really neck deep in it until about 5, 6 years ago, when we, said, we're in the backyard of Hollywood. We hired a strategist for the organization, and she basically said, you need to really expand this work. I mean, you're in the backyard. And that's when we made that intention. It really grew. And so now we're like the go-to organization for TV networks and film studios as consultants. So, I can't really talk about the projects, but we've consulted on high-profile projects like Aladdin that's coming out next year, The Looming Tower, Jack Ryan that's coming out in August, and those are the more current ones.
Now, are you able to take also a more proactive role? Like, do you go to networks and say, what about doing this?
So, yes. So, basically, once we started the department, we created a roadmap, right, for the department, an operational plan, if you will. And part of the operational plan is outreach, outreach, outreach. engage everyone. Engage people who disagree with us, engage people who agree with us, who love us and hate us. And that way they know you're out there and you're always a resource for them. Now, currently, we're more proactive in knocking on doors to say, hey, you know, your sitcom is amazing. Can we give you some ideas? We're not a watchdog, and I really want to underscore that we are not in it to tell the industry what they're doing wrong, but to help them tell a better story. So we consider ourselves partners with them when we're in, but for the most part, Julie, we don't have to knock on doors, because what we're seeing right now, to some degree, to a great degree, is that they are becoming more sensitive to ensuring they're telling it right and telling it better. It is good.
Hollywood's starting to figure out inclusion.
And that's another thing that came out, I think, more pronounced after Trump came to the scene. And that's another silver lining. And I don't want to sugarcoat it. I want to be very clear that there's a long way to go. And we, marginalized communities, Muslims, Hispanics, African Americans, LGBTQ from the communities, are not represented as well as they should be. However, as a whole, it's getting a little bit better.
Now, are you guys collecting data?
So that's collecting data is a project in itself. I think I think that's the next step. To take to the studios and say, hey.
Yeah, so you have some real metrics around it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
but that takes a lot of time and money too.
Oh yeah, it does.
Exactly.
Okay, now it's funny asking this question because you and I both know why. But why is it important? Why does it matter to have representation in television?
Well, I think it's to say that so we can understand each other is kind of an understatement. I think it's to understand, learn, accept, and respect each other. And the only way we can do that is to know each other. It's beyond tolerance. We don't want to be tolerated. And I've always said this, and I've been on the record as saying, marginalized communities and immigrants, we're not paying to be tolerated. We're wonderful. And so we want to be accepted and respected. And that is why we are part of this country. We go back from when the country started. You know, this country was built on the immigrant experience. This is a melting pot, right? And so we moved away from that. And we need to pronounce it and make it clear that marginalized communities are not visitors to the country. We made the country. We are what the country is. And everybody's from somewhere. And no one's going anywhere. We belong and we're going to stay. And so the why is to create understanding. And when you create understanding and acceptance and respect, hopefully you'll minimize hate crimes and hate speech and a fractured nation, if you will, which I think we are now. We're very much a fractured nation.
Well, it is amazing because you just notice on the news something happens. There's a crime committed by a Muslim person and they're a terrorist.
Right.
And there's a horrible crime committed by a white guy and he's a nuanced with a lot of context, very serious issues in his childhood we need to look into. And it's such a stark contrast in understanding people. How do you think we got there and how do you think we changed that?
How we got there, this was before. This was decades of how we got here was decades. It's the chicken or the egg. Hollywood does take advantage of what happens in other countries and other societies, right? For example, let me break it down for you. For example, in Saudi Arabia, as the government, not as a people, but as a government, they're very restrictive towards women. The fact that women can drive now is like absolutely embarrassing to be like happy about it. That's just, I'm sorry.
Ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's not a faith thing. That's not an Islamic thing. That was just a country that imposed this and other oppressive laws on its, population, or a great part of the population. And Hollywood then on the side is, well, wait a second, this is a great story, And so
can you believe women just got the right to drive?
Let's make this an 8-season Emmy Award-winning hit, So I don't know. It's partly Hollywood's problem, and it's partly the problem of does life imitate art or does art imitate life? It's both. So how do we change it is two ways. I think I let MPAC and our public policy department worry about the politics of it all. What I do is I work with American Muslim screenwriters to get in there and to educate themselves and get those degrees and get that experience, so they can be in writers' rooms and they can be on the network side as executives in authority, green lighting positions. And so how do we fix it is us getting in there to tell our own stories. And that is what MPAC is doing so well. And that's part of our connecting, where we're connecting Muslim talent, specifically screenwriters, Julie, with decision makers and creatives in the industry. We just had a fabulous lab, a TV comedy writing lab with ABC Television just last Thursday. Absolutely. They had to submit their projects, their scripts rather, and they had to be chosen. So this isn't like a cakewalk either. They spent 8 hours with this wonderful executive, Dr. Michelle Anderson. She goes by DMA, huge person in the ABC family, and she dove right into each script and basically told them to punch it up and resubmit it into another programs. And hopefully one of the screenwriters, if not more, will be chosen to move forward, and so on and so on. We've done that before in the past. Yeah, it is. And so empowerment is huge in changing it. We cannot wait for the white, straight, male executive to wake up and say, hey, I want to work on the Muslim community, or hey, I want to work with this minority community. We all have to do it for ourselves, however, with the help of the industry, because the industry rather goes on for decades and decades, right? And so there's their way of doing things. So we have to also kind of rattle the cage, if you will.
Someone likened it to, it's a machine that is in motion. Like the train is running down the track. You can't stop the train. No. You just got to jump on.
Right.
As it's
going. You got to jump on and deal with it as it's going 100 miles an hour. But it can be done. Other immigrant communities have done this. I mean, so it can be done. And I think Muslims are not an exception. I really am hopeful. Again, I want to underscore there's a lot of work to be done. A lot of work to be done still and forever. But it is, I feel like we're turning the corner.
What do you say to answer a lot of the misconceptions that there are about Islam, especially from like an evangelical Christian community?
Sure, yeah. Specifically just as a whole, or do you have a specific misconception?
Yes, I'm going to say things like, maybe this is Iran specific, death to America, Islam is a religion of hate. Islam wants to kill people. Islam wants to kill Christians. Islam wants to kill Americans. Like just all of that nonsense that you hear, and people saying it as if they really, truly believe it.
Yeah, I think with all due respect to those people, and I'm just going to make a blanket statement, they're not well informed.
Obviously.
Right. They're not well informed. They're getting their news from a specific group of people. The media promotes that misconception. And Muslims, unless something wrong has happened, like a terrorist attack done by a Muslim, they don't usually get the mic. So we're always hearing, how come you meaning the Muslims, have not condemned terrorism? Well, that can't be true, because we've condemned terrorism since forever.
Yeah.
But where is it? Is it showing? Is it on air? No. But when do you see a Muslim on air, on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC?
In the perp walk.
When there's a terrorist attack and a Muslim is denouncing the act, that specific act, but not overall the work that we're doing, to condemn terrorism or to even educate people about Islam, about true Islam. No one wants to hear about that. They only want to hear from us when something bad happens.
That's so interesting you say that, because I've been noticing now on all the Sunday morning news pundit shows, which I watch religiously, now everyone, even Fox, has a woman and an African American. Always, even if it's a token. They're really trying to do that, and they should probably stick a Muslim on that table too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is correct, but it's tokenism is not going to help us either, whether it's a token Muslim or African American or token woman. It has to be genuine. You know what they say, I'm going to botch this saying up, but basically, like one woman in a writer's room is like affirmative action. 2 women is a nuisance, but 3 or 4 is a movement.
2 is a nuisance.
But I don't, and you know what I mean?
I
mean, just
but
the idea, and there is actually a saying about it, but I don't know if that was the correct one. But basically, the idea that when you have 1, you just have that token, so you can write home about it, right? When you have 2, now you're dealing with something going on. But when you have 3 or more, now you have a movement, you have something. So we're not looking to be, the one Muslim on this one show, so the network can get off the hook. No. We want.
I'm just thinking as a bare minimum.
Sure. Let's start with the bare minimum. Minimum, Julie. Sure, absolutely.
Having them know what.
Yeah. Not a problem. We'll start with the bare minimum. Not a problem. But then again, if you have a Muslim, and I hate to say this, but if you have a Muslim on Fox News, that Muslim, not to be judgmental, but that Muslim might not be the, speaking from an objective point of view. This Muslim could be a neocon. You know what I mean?
Right.
So having a Muslim, doesn't necessarily fit the bill. I mean, you want the right person too. Yeah. Someone who's respected in the community.
Right. It's hard to do any of this with just blanket.
You can't.
Tokenism.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. And we need to be very careful of the tokenism, because that's how people are off the hook.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've never heard it said that way, as you're off the hook. Yeah, because you've checked the box.
You check the box.
I don't have a problem.
Exactly.
What do you make of women in the country in the last year or 2?
You mean in our country?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's awesome. I think, first of all, the fact that women were only given the right to vote in the 1920s, right? When you think about it, that alone is like mind-boggling. When you really think about it. I mean, seriously. I mean, I think about it often, like, because I love this country. I absolutely love being an American. I love being Muslim. I just do. But when you really kind of unpack, and unpeel, like you peel the onion, you realize, oh my God, like this country has its issues. Like how are we still talking about Roe v. Wade coming back on the table, for example? Do you know what I mean?
We're still talking about it vehemently as if it's still up for discussion.
I know we are, because it is.
It's amazing.
There's a big part of this country that's still talking about it, but how is that even possible? How is it possible that women were only given the right to vote? Like, how is it possible that women were not seen as people, that can vote, who can vote? It is ridiculous. And let's not even start with the whole African American experience. I mean, that is only from the 60s. Yeah. I mean, that is just, and this is America.
And for people to act like we are in a post-racial world,
exactly,
and everyone has had every advantage, so what's wrong with people?
Exactly. So when you think about that and our issues here and our history, then you kind of go back to the Muslim majority countries, for example, where historically, and I'm talking historically during the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad, where women were leaders. In the movement.
What?
Right, absolutely. First person that ever married the Prophet actually proposed to him. She was a businesswoman. Women were given so much responsibility and were decision makers. To think about what happened to women in the Muslim world also boggles my mind. Like, how is it that we had all these rights, and then these Muslim majority countries impose these weird laws on women?
In the politics.
Yeah. So I have the same, I'm perplexed, but in different ways. Like, how can this be America, but it was only recently that African Americans were given the right to vote? How is it that Saudi Arabia gave women the right to drive?
How did they ever not have the right to drive?
Or dress the way they want to dress? that's not Islam. That is a government. That's an Islamic government, which, by the way, I don't actually like to refer to it as an Islamic government. I would just say a Muslim majority government, because nothing that is happening in Saudi Arabia, for example, is Islamic.
Oh.
No, it's a mouthful, isn't it?
Well, no, I'm having a moment here. So what we see as the oppression of women and the burqa and you can't leave the house,
correct. Blah, blah,
that
blah,
is
blah, blah.
not religious.
Islam.
That's political.
That is cultural and political. Correct.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And what happened in America happened in reverse, right? So, for example, if you look at the Judeo-Christian theology, women are not highly regarded in Judeo-Christian theology, right? They can't divorce, they can't, inherit property. My point is, in America, women, we work to say, no, this isn't going to work for us. And in the Middle East, it worked in a different way. They had the right to begin with, and then culture and politics took away those rights.
That seems harder to do.
It is harder to do.
How do you shut the women up once you've let them talk?
I don't know, but we need to. The women in Muslim majority countries, and I'm again making a blanket statement, are amazing, highly educated, and very outspoken. And to tell them they can't do this or they have to wear this and that before they go outside, and they can't sit on this, parliament, and they can't. That's just ridiculous.
How does it even work?
I don't know, Julie. I don't know how it works.
Is it just bodily abuse that keeps them in line?
You mean like physical abuse?
Yes.
I hope not. No, I don't. I hope not. I do believe domestic violence exists there as it does exist here, but I think it's just cultural.
Yeah. Now, I was just talking to a friend of mine who was in London and was on Oxford Street, which is now very Muslim, and there were so many really young women wearing burqas in London, which was just seemed a little like head scratching.
That's interesting. I can't speak to that because obviously it's not the law of the land.
Yeah.
Obviously. So I can't speak to that. I mean, I wouldn't think it would be a choice either. I mean, I would never want to wear a burqa.
No.
But then again, who knows? I don't know.
It's puzzling anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you don't have to speak for every Muslim
You
in the
can't.
world.
I can't speak for 1.8 billion Muslims in the world. I just can't. Yeah.
Okay, so
I think the net, Julie, of this conversation is it is important on all of us to understand the difference between a faith and the people of the faith, and a government that is pretending to be the protector of the faith.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about those distinctions?
Sure. I mean, the faith, it's very clear, what the rules are, what the tenets of Islam are, the pillars of Islam, the 10 Commandments. The people of the faith are how people interpret the faith. And then the government is basically how they want to rule the country. And all that gets commingled and mixed up. And the faith is the collateral damage because it's the faith that has the bad reputation.
Right, because you're assuming a lot about the faith because of how the government reacts.
You're assuming a lot about the faith based on how the people and governments act, yeah. And like you are talking about 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, I would say that 99% of us act like God-fearing people, like wonderful humans, wonderful humanitarians, very giving, very loving, and very kind. So when we are talking about governments and we are talking about certain people who commit certain things, we also are talking about the extremes in those communities, right? And we're forgetting about the normal, the majority of the community who are just fun-loving, God-fearing, people. And
just like in every community.
Exactly. But yet when it comes to Islam and Muslims, we are judged by our most extreme elements. And that is not fair.
It's not fair, and why is it not the same for extreme Christians?
Correct.
Or extreme Jews?
Correct. Exactly. No, exactly. No one is saying, that the KKK is modeling after Jesus Christ.
Right. Or represents all Christians.
That too is an extreme representation. So we don't have that luxury as other communities have. But you know what? I think that we as a community keep working at it. It will change our condition, and will change the narrative ultimately. Why? Because every other community in this wonderful nation of ours has gone through this, and this is our turn right now. And every other community that has come through it is a stronger community for it. So,
how many years do you think the arc is?
it's going to have to be whatever it is. But if you believe in this country and want its like the betterment, then we just got to keep working at it. The good thing, though, Julie, about us being so late in the game is that we are learning from others, number one, and number two, we are getting the support of others. And so we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And so hopefully it won't take, decades, but of course it's going to take decades, but it's not going to take forever.
It's not going to take centuries.
Won't take centuries.
It'll
correct.
take decades.
Yeah.
And you have the access to the people who are shaping culture on our screens every
Correct.
day.
And pop culture is really impactful. Social media is very impactful. You don't need to have a hit television show to have a hit web series. You can create your own thing. Look at you. Look at you and your podcast.
We are worldwide.
There you go. But you know what I mean. We don't need the old formulas to change the narrative like we did in the past.
For sure, it's so accessible. You can get your programming out
there. Right.
There.
Exactly.
It's great.
You asked me a question. I forgot.
What are your ultimate goals for the organization?
So the overall ultimate goals for the Hollywood Bureau is to be a real impact in the industry. We are the go-to organization for the industry. Historically, there aren't any Muslim organizations that actually have Hollywood departments with staff and everything. There are organizations who do work in Hollywood, but not a full-on, department to do it. So the ultimate goal is to continue to connect Muslim talent to decision makers and creatives so we can tell our own stories. And there's no end point. You'll never arrive. We're always just going to have to keep at it. Small, like short term, I would love to see one of our emerging talent that, we got in the door a year ago, 2 years ago, in a couple of years, be a showrunner, be a staff writer, be an executive. That's our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is to change the narrative. But how we get there is what I just explained.
I think that is how you get there.
Yeah.
Just get people in the room.
And
it's almost to the point where once we get to a place where all the people are just people and we don't have to put everybody in each box that they're in and everyone can only tell their personal narrative and throw all their guts on the table, we will have a right.
And I think, too, we have to show the industry, Julie, that getting it right, like you just said, and that used to be the tagline for MPAC's Hollywood Bureau, helping the industry get it right. And and then we thought, what, maybe that implies that
they're getting it wrong.
Right, exactly. So we kind of moved away from that. But
getting it better.
Getting it better. And that's why we say to help the industry tell a better story.
Oh, that's good too.
That's our new tagline.
What are your personal goals?
My personal goals?
Your personal career goals.
Oh, gosh. That's a great question. I've been with the organization for 18 years. And
that's a long time.
Almost 18. I should say almost 18 years. And I see myself with the organization even, longer. But what's so awesome about MPAC is I could do MPAC and I could do something else at the same time because we all support each other and we all believe in each other. So my ultimate goal, don't laugh, but that is to be a showrunner for a TV sitcom.
Awesome. So are you writing on the side?
No, not doing anything towards that goal. No, I'm not. I really am not. That's just a goal. I don't. It's out there.
Someday.
Yeah, not at all. I would love to see a Goldberg, Fresh Off the Boat, a Blackish for the Muslims.
Yeah.
Not in your face, not shoved down your throat.
Something hilarious.
Something hilarious and message driven with levity.
Like something like The Wrong End of the Table by Acer.
Oh, by Acer Selman. You want to talk about Acer? Yeah.
Sure, let's talk about Acer.
I know Acer's awesome. She is amazing. And I am excited about her book.
Yeah, me too.
And she is probably a future showrunner.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think your book will come out and then that'll be it.
I really do think so. And Acer's been on the scene for a while, and I'm just so proud of her and to see that she's really feeling comfortable now. talking about it. And,
for sure. It's so exciting to
It
watch.
is.
What have we not talked about that we should have talked about?
Since this is going to be released at a good time, we just finished with our ABC Television Comedy Lab. In October, we're doing the TV Drama Lab with Wise Entertainment. They did Los East High on Hulu. So they're going to facilitate that one, and we're going to do submissions in the near future. In 2 weeks, and maybe I should have started with what's coming up next, we're shooting our first short with Mike Musallam Productions. So about 4 months ago, we asked for, we created a contest, and we asked for short submissions, and we funded part of it, and Mike Musallam Productions funded another part of it, and we picked a script, and we are going to be shooting it in mid-August.
You're now content creators.
And we are now, hopefully content creators. And also we want to maybe take it to the, on the festival circuit, and we'll see what happens. But it's our first try in a major thing. Like we've done little, videos for YouTube and whatever, but this is actually a short. And the story is so nice. It's about this young Muslim, a young man who's Muslim, who's kind of in the closet as Muslim. And his best friend is gay and coming out. And so you have that narrative of the gay best friend empowering his friend to come out as Muslim in an environment that's not very conducive to being Muslim, And so you have that storyline going on. And so we're excited.
Isn't that interesting, the parallels?
It is.
I mean, there are some places where it'd be much easier to come out as gay these days than
and that's so interesting, and that's where that's how the script reads.
Yeah. Oh, how fun.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And then in October, we have the TV Drama Lab. And then on November 10th, we have our annual convention. It's our 18th annual convention, and we're going to have panel discussions around immigration.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's the roadmap for the next 2 months.
Your job sounds really fun.
It is. It is fun. I pause only because it is fun, but you have to be smart about it. You need to make sure that your messaging is consistent and that you're not a wet rag on people.
Right. Well, I think you're very strategic.
We are strategic.
But I can hear in your voice how passionate you are about this. And so, how fun must your job be?
Yeah, my job is fun. I eat my way through my job because I'm always out to lunch and breakfast and dinner.
That was my last job. I ate my way through.
Yeah, so I have to kind of be strategic about that.
I get that.
And so it is fun, but more than being fun, it's purposeful.
Right.
And that's what I think I really, why I respect, MPAC and the leaders of MPAC, specifically, Salam al-Mariyati, for having that foresight to see this is what we need to be doing and doing it, And so we have a big job to do, and I'm glad, MPAC is at the forefront of it.
And it's great, and it sounds like it brings together all your skills and interests personally.
Two passions.
Yeah, to give you a lot of purpose. And fantastic.
And I get paid for it, and
it's amazing.
Have a health plan, dental plan at the same time.
It is all good.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for young women just coming up, trying to get into business?
So basically with regards to young women, is know your value. You have to know your value. You need to know what you bring to the table, because when you know what that is, by organically, you teach others to value you, and you put the measures in place so no one crosses the line with you. And so knowing your value and what you bring to the table and what you contribute to, whether you're in an organization or a project or the world, will force people to know your value. It will command respect. And so that's my advice to women. I think when women who are very vocal about knowing their value and are vocal in general are oftentimes put in their place by others. And if you really, really, truly know your value, you will always push back on that. So we women, whether we're Muslim, Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, or whatever we are, we have to work harder to make our value known to society and to our organizations and to others, because historically, it's been male dominant, and so just by that mere fact, we have to be more vocal and stronger in making sure that no one takes away our right to express our value.
Because we're dealing with a lot of bias and unconscious bias
Correct.
and years of patriarchy.
Correct. And that we also want to make sure that no one's doing us a favor by getting us in a door or having us on staff or having us in a writer's room or having us on, in government. We belong. We belong. We're all God's creatures, and we obviously have so much to give, and we should not let anyone take that away from us.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Thank you for having me. I want to say that it's podcasts like yours that get our message out and gives us exposure. And so I wanted to say thank you for that, for this opportunity.
Oh, I'm so happy you came and did it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Sue Obeidi for sharing her story. And I also wanted to mention that you can buy tickets to that convention she mentioned that's happening on November 10th, Advancing America Towards Justice, at convention.mpac.org. And I will also link to it on my website. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And also go subscribe to the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.